thank you for coming out tonight on this snowy, slushy, messy evening. That's one thing we can never count on is Mother Nature. And at any rate, I do appreciate you taking the time to come out and speak with us and have a good discussion about the Ontario Soccer Association. So my name is Ron Spill. I'm the president of the association. And with the board of directors and the executive committee of the OSA, we're doing a reach out program that's going to involve all our regions in the months of February, March, and April. And this is our second town hall meeting. And our first one was in Hamilton. We did it in Region 2. And as such, we had Niagara District, Hamilton District, and Peel-Halton District. Tonight we have Huronia, we have Toronto, and Charles Wyatt sends his regrets, but Charles is very ill, and he's just getting over an illness, but he does send his regrets, and I told Charles that we wish him good recovery in his illness. And we also have North York and York Region with us this evening, and I'll let Bruce, our moderator, do the introduction of the head table guests. But before we start, I would like to introduce Bill Condy, our executive committee member. Bill, thank you for being here this evening. And also, thank you. And also Dan Tomlinson, our secretary on the executive committee on the board. And this is really an outreach effort on our part to listen to you and understand some of the challenges that you have, that we all have working together to improve the game of soccer. And as such, move the game forward. So having said that, it's a very informal type meeting. We've asked Bruce Henderson to be our moderator, and Bruce will take questions from the floor. Some people have sent questions in through the database at the OSA office and or through Bruce. So Bruce has a lot of questions to keep the dialogue going. Again, I want it to be a very informal meeting. All I'm asking is there's dignity and respect amongst us all. It's okay to have a bit of emotion about what you believe in or what your passion is, and that's good. But I ask everybody to respect one another. Certainly we'll do our best to answer questions. If we can't get the questions answered, we'll provide a feedback process through email and or through dialogue through the website to address it. Our plan is to have 4 more sessions going towards the end of April. So check the website out because we will be moving around the province as we go forward. So with that, again, I want to thank you for being here. And certainly I want to thank you all for the excellent work that you're doing in the capacity that you're in, whatever that capacity may be. Our association is the engine of the country from a soccer perspective, and I believe, can have a real significant impact on the game moving forward. So again, I want to thank you very much for being here. Just arrived is Lugo De Federico, who's our vice president. Welcome, Lugo. And also I'd like to introduce Dan Berger. Dan is at the back, and Dan is our facility person at the OSA Center. And then I'll turn it over to Bruce, and Bruce can do all of the other introductions of our guests here this evening. So thank you very much. Bruce?
Thank you, Ron. Ron said we're going to try to keep it informal tonight, but we do insist on one rule. Only the person with a microphone can speak. So if you do not have a microphone, you may not speak. However, I will walk around. Anybody who wants to speak, and I'll hand you the microphone. So you do have the opportunity. You can ask questions of our panel. There's already prepared questions that have come in from the last town hall, and people sent questions in. You can fill out one of these. They're out there. If you want one, just put your hand up. I'll bring one, and you fill this out. Notice you have to write nice and large on the lines. So it comes out like this, because I'm going to have to take my glasses off. Before I introduce the panel, just a bit about myself. I'm in my 24th year with the Ontario Soccer Association. I have lived in 2 of the districts, North York and York Region. Heavily involved as a referee in both. Played for the Armadale Old Timers for a number of years in North York. And I've been involved professionally as a soccer administrator, sport administrator since '72, and soccer since '79. I'm going to ask members of the panel to each introduce themselves, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them before we.
See, time's up.
Nobody speak.
Use your time.
There's no possible phone minutes.
We don't need a mic. My name is Andy Dudumis, and I'm with the North York Soccer Association. I've been involved, actually, I first was volunteered, and then all of a sudden I just got hooked up into this type of business. But I've been with the North York Soccer for 20 years. We're the city just above Toronto, not York Region. We are. North York is the city above Toronto. Started as a coach, got volunteered into discipline, got into the district, and the rest is history, I believe. We all play a role. I'm glad to see volunteers coming out and helping the whole structure of the OSA. I'm glad to see that there's some participation here tonight, depending on looking at the weather out there. Actually, as a little survey, how many people are here from York Region? Toronto? North York? Okay, the ratios are just like I expected. You're only.
Look at that.
Fantastic. You're only you guys may have looked bad. Somebody's from Aurelia. Who's from Aurelia? Fantastic. Fantastic. That's about it. I'm glad to be here, and I thank York Region for hosting it, and the OSA as well. Thank you very much. It was a great idea.
Good evening. My name is Russ Turnbull. I'm the president of York Region Soccer Association. I've been involved in soccer about 15 years. I'm really a hockey guy, to be honest. But my last kids got involved, my youngest kids got involved in soccer. And I got involved with the Glen Shields Soccer Club, got conscripted into being the manager of a team, and got on the executive, became the president. And I remember one day I was talking to Bill Conde, and I was complaining about how the league operated. And Bill said, well, if you want to do something, you better volunteer your time and come up and get involved in the league. So I got involved with the league and now with the district. York Region represents about 40,000 registrants. It's a pretty vibrant group. There's 15 youth clubs. I probably hear from every club in the York Region, I think, at least once a week, Caesar. Is that fair? Yeah. And I'm really enjoying this, and I'm really glad to see everybody come out. I think that if we're going to make any movement ahead, it comes from the grassroots. It comes from people like yourself who have ideas. There isn't anybody in this room, I don't think, that can put forth a good idea to make things better here. And I'm here tonight to listen and engage and talk and see if we can move the game forward. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Guy Bradley. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Ontario Soccer Association. And I'd like to introduce Jerry Jennings. Jerry is a staff member with our organization, and two board members, well, for the organization. William Hay. William is a representative from Peel Halton Association, and also coming in just arrived is Wendy Brown from Wendy's a member of our executive committee as well. So I've been with the association since June of 2004. Like Bruce, I'm a professional sport administrator. I've been in this activity since the very early 70s. I worked in municipal parks and recreation as a director of a capital city for province, particularly from St. John's, Newfoundland. I've worked with the Sport Alliance of Ontario. I came from St. John's here, where we reorganized the Ontario Sport and Recreation Centre to be the Sport Alliance of Newfoundland. I played for two universities, played senior level within the Challenge Cup framework. My club was not really, we've never made it to the Challenge Cup. We've made it to our provincial finals a couple of times, but not so much there. I'm also involved at the international level with other sports, so I bring what I believe is a very community-based mind from what we do, what we need to outreach at our community level and all the way to high performance sport. And again, on behalf of the Ontario Soccer Association and all the board and staff, I'd like to thank you as volunteers. for all your time and energy with our association. We are the largest provincial sport organization in the country, and actually we're the third largest sport organization in the country. The first one being the Canadian Soccer Association, which we have 44% membership, and then next is Hockey Canada, and third in terms of actual membership is the Ontario Soccer Association. Close to 375,000 outdoor members, close to 90,000 indoor members, 11,000 referees, close to 30,000 coaches, and that would include the 24,000 outdoor coaches, 6,000 indoor coaches, and just folks who like to put up their hand and say, I'll contribute to Soccer in Ontario. Tens and tens of thousands of volunteers. So for that, welcome for tonight. Thanks for coming out, and I really do appreciate your contribution to our game in Ontario. Thank
you. President of the association, started 12 years ago in the game, 3 daughters, maybe a lot of people in the room from the same type of opportunity there. Watched them play the great game and move up in being community builders. Similar to Russ, standing on the sideline, we need some help. Somebody grabbed my shoulder, pulled me into the room. Next thing I know, I'm involved, and it's a great sport, great team sport. But more importantly, as leaders, we'll be able to change the community from a health and wellness perspective. The game offers a lot, and as such, I'm very excited and enthusiastic about the association and how we can move it forward. I also represent the Ontario Soccer Association at the CSA level, and of course, you know, there's lots of dialogue and discussion going on at the CSA level, and so it's very important that I'm able to hear the message from the membership as a whole, and then take that message forward at the national level. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. I will turn it over to Bruce and get going. Thanks, Bruce.
So we'll start off with some of the questions that come in. Hopefully we'll get some from the audience, but they do cover a wide range of activities: long-term player development, Toronto FC, high performance, governance of soccer, code of ethics, aims, underage soccer, district associations, OSA website, social media issues, liability insurance, and respecting soccer. So we cover quite a wide range, but if you have any questions related to any of these, what I want to do is when we have a topic, I want to fully address that topic. So I'll start off with a question. We'll ask the panel members, if each of them can speak on it. Sometimes it might only apply to one. And if anybody else at that point wants to add something on that topic, there'll be your opportunity to raise a question or make a point. And then once we finish that topic's put to bed, we move on to the next topic. So we'll start off with long-term player development. Once we finish these, we'll entertain questions from the audience pertaining to long-term player development. Actually, there was about 10 questions came in our last town hall meeting on long-term player development, so I put them all in 2 pages. It's quite a bit here. I'll do it. I'll try to read it all, and then we'll address it one by one. What are the OSA's plans for moving forward with the implementation of long-term player development? The pending LTPD involves a reduction of the maximum number of players on a team. Under 12s and down, have fewer players than currently plays. How will this impact fields? Will this increase field shortages because of the reducing number of players per team, which will obviously increase the number of teams? How will clubs and district associations be involved? So we'll ask the districts here how they plan to get involved in LTPD. How will it affect leagues? How will it affect other competitions such as the Ontario Cup and tournaments? And this one was a statement followed by a question by one of the last participants. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. As our governing body, what plans or steps is the OSA taking to support the implementation of LTPD, especially with respect to leagues and competitions? So we'll start off with the first part. We'll ask Guy, what are the OSA's plans for moving forward with the implementation of LTPD?
Thanks, Bruce. The long-term player development model that is considered by the Canadian Soccer Association through the Wellness to World Cup program really has its genesis in Canada under a program known Canadian Sport for Life. The architects of that particular program are basically, they're here in Canada. They've developed this system, and it's a philosophy of youth development and how we can improve sport delivery across the country, and particularly of how we're able to provide the fundamentals of an athlete moving through the system. Long-term player development is not just about creating elite athletes. It's not about just preparing people to play or individuals to play for the national team. As I mentioned, I played for 2 universities. I played at Canada Games, but age 17 or 18, whatever I was active for life. I was not going to be a high-performance athlete at all. I just didn't have the talent and the speed to be at that particular level. So what we've been doing, we've been working with the Canadian Soccer Association as part of the Wellness to World Cup program. We did have staff people involved with the writing of that particular document. Working with the Canadian Soccer Association at this particular time, they are attempting to develop a release plan of how we're going to launch this. One of the key things that we were looking at is how we're going to develop coaching programs. So most recently, in the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, the Canadian Soccer Association has hosted a learning facilitator, master learning facilitator program. For those of you that have been in the sport for a long time, we would just call that a trainer program. Train to trainer. The new terminology, or the terminology that's been used most recently, is master learning facilitator. We were invited to send 2 people to that master learning facilitator workshop, and in actual fact, we've sent 9 people to where we identified 9 to go. I think 8 actually had the time to go. And we've selected these from these individuals from all around the province. What we will be doing is having learning facilitator training programs all throughout the province so that we can now provide more coach training at the youth level. Our intent is for clubs to be able to deliver directly coach development programs. Right now we have about 50 instructors, coaching instructors here in the province, and if a club wishes to run a coach development program, you have to call the home office, we assign somebody, and that person comes out and does the training program. We're moving away from that particular program per se. We're just finalizing the details of hiring what we call a chief technical officer. And as a chief technical officer for soccer operations, not a chief technical officer for IT. We're pretty close to hiring that, and that person's going to provide leadership and guidance with regards to the implementation of long-term player development. One of the items which we're going to do is that we're getting ready to post for a position of Director of Coach Education, Coach Development. And that person will lead the actual development side of how we're going to provide coach implementation and coach training programs throughout the province. At the end of this month, March 25th, 26th, we are hosting a workshop based on a workshop which we did last year. This one's been supported and funded by the province of Ontario. We're inviting at least 1 individual from each district, and we're leaving it up to the district of how they would identify that person, particularly the technical person. What we're looking at doing is outlining and developing a plan to be involved with 3 particular items. One is how do we create an awareness of long-term player development. Secondly is how we create the education component around long-term player development. And thirdly is how we develop our execution or activation plan. Right now there's a number of clubs who are doing various principles of long-term player development, but it's not been adopted province-wide. What we attempt to do through the awareness program is provide that update for parents particularly and clubs of what it means to be involved in the long-term player development program. Because many people that we're finding thinking it is an athlete development program and how we get the kids either to a regional team, provincial team, or national team. It's not that. It's about developing a strategy, a philosophy of how we provide developmental opportunities for kids, not just based on their age, but based on their ability. If I can ask a question, how many clubs are here? Just about 1 hand per club. Okay, so it's 10 or 12. Of those 10 or 12 clubs, How many believe that you have a club, not you personally, that your club has a thorough understanding of long-term player development? So it's a small number. And not to be, that's what we found last time too as well. So which leads us to believe that while we talk about long-term athlete development programs, or what we call it in soccer, long-term player development program, that first of all, we need to improve the job which we're doing in creating awareness of what this program is and what does it mean. Once we've created that awareness, then we'll do the education about how we can implement it and exactly what it means. Here's the impact of how we launch that long-term player development program. And thirdly, provide the education. Thirdly, do the execution part. We just did one program before, and we tried to educate and execute or implement at the exact same time, and it didn't work. We're really looking at a rollout for the coaching program late 2011, and particularly in the winter of 2012, with a full activation or some type of activation moving ahead to the program in 2012.
Second part of the question involves fields. So I'm going to address this to the district associations here. The questioner feels that there would be more teams as a result of fewer players on teams, which is plus different sized fields, the demand for a mini soccer field for under 12 and below in the LTV concept. So how will we address field shortages in your district? So start with us.
Well, I think it is an issue. There's no question. I think, though, that it's a reallocation of fields probably for most clubs, meaning that in many cases what clubs do, their premium fields go to their rep programs and their house leagues and project what I call fields that aren't maybe full regulation fields sometimes to play what I'll call 11-a-side soccer, or maybe they're playing 9-a-side depending on their house league. I think it requires that reallocation, but I think more importantly, it's going to require the engagement of districts and clubs with their municipalities to go in and talk to their municipalities and work with them to reset up some of the fields. I know in York Region, we are blessed with a lot of fields, but there will be an issue with 9-a-side fields, for example, and we will have to go and talk to each municipality probably and get them to restructure some of the fields. So it is an issue, but I think it's a manageable issue, but we have to start working on that now as opposed to later. Because with government, as you know, plans take time to implement. So it's a now issue.
Are you taking comments now or later? Are you taking comments now?
Sure. Well, I'm just going to go through the panel first, then we'll go to the audience. And you can talk on any of these topics.
I know in North York and generally in the city of Toronto, as a mature area right now, they're not really developing a lot of new facilities. So it definitely will be a big issue to deal with. We're looking at possibly working with the city to convert some of the existing fields that possibly might need some upgrading. So in that way, they will probably convert some of the full-size fields into smaller mini fields. But generally in the city of Toronto will be a big issue.
The third and fourth part of the question, the long-term players, I'm going to combine it because there's a little bit of overlap. We talk about competitions and things. So I'm going to start off with Ron, because it's about leadership. And it starts off, lead, follow, or get out of the way. So as our governing body, what are the plans or steps the OSA is going to do to support the implementation, not the rollout as guys described, but especially with respect to leagues and competitions. Leagues will be restructured. There's bound to be some resistance. It'll impact other competitions, tournaments. It's going to impact Ontario Cup. So what are the steps that the OSA is going to do as a governing body? And then we'll ask our districts a similar question. Ron?
So with respect to the OSA, the first issue with respect to the competition model will be, of course, meeting with our existing leagues through provincial league management, right down to Central and South Region and East Region, et cetera, and really sitting down and talking about how to form and how to move forward with respect to the competition model. the competition model will have to change. Currently, the competition model, and this came up in spades at the last town hall meeting, the competition model currently right now is promotion and relegation. There's a tremendous amount of coaching, there's a tremendous amount of recruiting, there's a tremendous amount of investment by clubs to have teams or form teams and develop athletes and develop their processes. And then as they move up through the competition model, the players get recruited and or poached to different teams, and in essence, the game breaks down. So the idea behind the competition model will be an idea of having all the high-level athletes playing at one level with no relegation promotion factor. And then in combination with that, of course, will have to be all the other leagues that feed it. As Guy mentioned, the process just isn't about our exceptional athletes or our top quality athletes. It's about everyone playing the game of soccer. So for our senior leagues, for our leagues like the OSL and others, we're going to have to tweak and move forward. This is going to require a tremendous amount of communication and involvement by all parties. At the end of the day, we're trying to do the right things for the right reasons, and we need to get to a player-developed model, not a team-developed model. So the process will start to move forward. You'll see the opportunity for you to participate through communications, through our CEO, through our websites, etc. And certainly that, from my perspective, is going to be a significant challenge for us as we move collectively in that vein.
Does anybody want to comment on leadership regarding LPPD?
We're definitely waiting for the direction from the OSA and bringing the leagues to the table to discuss this.
We'll go to the audience. If anybody wants to speak, Ernie's first. Anybody wants to speak? For those who came in late, we're going to deal one topic at a time. Talking long-term player development now. Once everybody's had their questions and comments, we'll move on to another topic. So just raise your hand so I can get ready.
Well, my comment started with fields, but it refers to the whole long-term development program. I have no objections to people like Bobby Lennox and you guys telling me this is what we need for the rep competitive player. The rep players represent 10% of our club, 10%. And the problem with your OSA and CSA is eventually you cascade these things down to the house league. That's our bread and butter. You're going to kill the goose that lays the golden egg if you go to smaller field. We're landlocked in Richmond Hill. We have no extra fields. Our mini fields are packed. We have no more room. We can manage 2 9x9 fields for rec program. If you said 9x9 is going to apply across the whole board, we're screwed. You can't have 7v7 and 9v9 on the same field. Also, in a town like Richmond Hill, we're not the only permit holder. There are other permit holders. So the town has to satisfy all their constituency. We don't dictate to the town what we're going to do. So I will support the rep program 100%. All I'm saying is please don't force this down on the house league. Now, some clubs want to do that for the house league, fine. Don't make Richmond Hill do it because we don't have the fields, we don't have the referees, we don't have the space. And in terms of long-term player development, I've tried to make this point to people like Dermot. House league players play about 14 hours a year. 1 hour a week for 14 weeks. I don't care whether you go 3-3, 5-5, 7-7, 9-9. That's not going to make a hell of a difference to our house league players who by the age of 12 or 13 quit the game anyway. But that's where the bulk of our money comes from. So my question is, why are you making us do things that we don't want to do? And for what reason?
Ernie, to your point about 10%, that is absolutely true. And I think the reform, if you want to use the word reform, the reform that has to take place is that 85% of our players are recreational players in the OSA. And we have, but yet they're governed and they're ruled by what I call the competition rules. And I think the whole idea of this model is that you'll remove that 10%, you'll identify that 10%, you'll have a structure for that 10%, but there'll be a relaxing and just the ability to play the game like I know you want.
Yes, well I certainly hope so.
And I think you've heard Bobby Lennox champion this in our district. I hope you have anyway. That I think is what this is about. I think we get mixed up, and Guy touched on it. We talk about a long-term player development model. It's really a long-term system. It's the idea that I start playing the game at 3 and I can play till whenever. And I'll play at the appropriate level that I want to play, not be forced to play under a structure. Okay? My ability will dictate where I play. And that's the player model rather than a team model.
Well, I'd like to see the OSA understand that principle.
Well,
That it's not a one-size-fits-all.
And I'm going to say something, and I want to take it in a different direction. You certainly come back to it, but we understand that. We understand that right now that we have a one-size-fits-all, and where that came from. In 1994, we had 165,000 members. Today, we have close to 370. 88% of our membership is recreation, but almost 100% of our rules are based on the old competitive model which we put in place. The board has realized that, and the board has established a working group to look at the rules. And simply the guidelines are just to make it simpler to play soccer in Ontario. And so we're looking at that. It's happening right now as we speak. And that was the genesis of it, is that we do have that one-size-fits-all, and that our rules are based on an old competition model that we need to redevelop, and so that the kids can play. And maybe at one time they'll, at a certain age, they'll find that they really like the game and they blossom and they want to go in a more competitive stream versus just going for a kick. And I think that's something which we'll look at through the long-term player development model as we put things in place, as we have this discussion about how it should be implemented. Right now, the Canadian Soccer Association, we work with them. They've just released the coaching model. Now that we know what that is, as we do our training, then we'll roll it out. But we'll be back to you, as Ron had mentioned. Met with Hugo Federico this morning. Hugo is leading up our strategic planning exercise, and the outreach that we're looking through this, through a conference that we're looking in the fall, plus the internet surveys that we're talking about. You will have lots of opportunity as clubs, because there'll just be a section there in the survey for clubs that have input. So the board is not moving ahead on its own. It will be taking the feedback and having the relationship with you, with the community, because the clubs are actually the ones who deliver the program. Not, in all due respect, not the districts, not the home office at the OSA. We have 671 clubs registered with us this year, and those are the folks that are providing the leadership. So working with the districts that we're able to provide that guidance as a collective. So when I talk about the Ontario Soccer Association, I'm just not talking about 7601 Martin Grove Road. I'm talking about the system, as Russ talked about, of the Ontario Soccer Association, which is inclusive of course, the Homos Association, known as the Ontario Soccer Association, the 21 district soccer associations, the 14 provincial and regional leagues, and of course the 671 clubs, plus all our associate members too as well. So when I talk about that, I talk about the collective, not just the decisions made by the board of directors.
I understand your question on fields, I really do. And, from a club perspective, we all wrestle with that. I'll tell you the only benefit that I have seen, because we took elements of this program, the long-term development plan, and put it into a club environment. What we found was removing stats and standings, keeping kids on mini until 13. We got a higher player retention. The drop-off that normally came at 13 and 14 in the second year of the program, in the third year of the program, was diminished. We had more kids coming back. They had more fun. They got more touches of the ball. The disparity between recreational kids at ages was reduced because of the field size and the dimension, and it's been workable for us.
I think logistically you got a problem.
Yep.
Well, you want to identify your club.
Oh, with the Bolton Wanderers.
Okay.
Any other questions on long-term player development? Okay, so we're going to put that one to bed. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Apologies.
You identify yourself?
Ian Mullen from the King City and Shopping Center. The 99, what is the long term where that's now the 99? Where is that going to switch to 11 year level? This year we're doing it at the 11. Is the idea to increases to U12 and U13 over time? Or is it, what's the sort of,
I'm going to cheat and put someone on the spot. Maybe Bobby, you can, because you've been involved in some of the discussions, maybe you can answer that question for us.
If you look at the model beyond it, I think it goes to U13.
That's
Bob,
what I
maybe you
thought.
want to stand up and just turn around so everybody can hear. Everybody hear that question?
Oh, please, can you get the mic?
Pretend we're in a Celtic game and let's hear
We're
your
having problems with mics.
But could you just repeat your question? I just want to make sure because it's a very pertinent question. Can you sort of stand up and address that group there?
The question I have is where are we going from U7 to U9 and U11? Like, where's the long term? I realize in the YRSA we're going to 9V9 and 11. And my understanding is that ultimately we want to go that to U13. Are we doing that like over 3 years, or is it over a longer period of time, and what's the goal?
So I've asked Bobby to answer the question. Bobby Lennox is the technical director for York Region. He is an Ontario Soccer Association instructor. Bobby is one of our master learning facilitators too as well, and has a real good feel of what's happening within that technical area to be able to provide, I think, something that's going to be pretty close to what we would be professing as the Ontario Soccer Association. So, Bob, thanks for standing up, and well, you got to answer the question now.
The answer to the question is that York Region are doing 9B9 2012, starting summer of 2012. The rollout plan, Dion, I don't know. We still have to decide that. As Russ knows, I would like to do that in 2011, but that ain't going to happen. So the plan is in 2012 to go 9B9, and we'll see how the rollout goes from there.
So in Durham has been doing the 9v9 program for 3 or 4 years now. And it's been met with some resistance from some clubs, yet it's been well received by others. And I think that's the key going forward, is we need to collectively look at what's going to be best for our athletes down the road. What is the key component that's going to keep the kids, our athletes, playing the game day in and day out? And again, these further discussions that we have, I think will give us a long-term plan moving forward. So I can't speak for Durham. It has, from their perspective, or that district's perspective, worked very well. But the big challenge there was they had to work with the municipalities to change the field size, change the net size, and of course there was significant costs associated with that, which comes back to Russell's opening comments about the importance of us collectively, not one club in one municipality, but 10 clubs in one municipality, lobbying our political masters, both at the municipal, provincial, and federal levels, come to the table and say we're going to need recreational dollars, or we're going to need recreational resources to, as what you said, Ernie, to look after the 85% of the people within that community that are playing the game. That's going to result in reduced medical costs, going to result in longer, people living longer, healthier, all those good things. So this whole issue of us lobbying collectively as a group, from my perspective, is a key component moving forward. And that's where I see the suits, their role, the suits role. That's where I see that. Where we don't want to get involved is with the track suits, the experts on the field. And I think there needs to be a definitive line drawn to say that when it comes to the actual game on the field and how the game's taught and how the game's played, etc., we leave that to the track suits. They're the experts. They're the ones who know. They're the ones who are certified, trained, etc., etc. It's up to the blue suits, from my perspective, to get our collective municipalities and government officials working together to provide more facilities. I know Andy's going to say, well, where are we going to put facilities? Well, you know, I look in Japan, they have facilities on top of buildings. Why aren't we that creative here in Canada? So I think there are a lot of opportunities there, and we need to pursue that going forward. So just to respond, in Durham, they've been doing it 3 or 4 years at 9v9.
How's your retention been in terms of that age group?
Retention within Durham has been pretty, I would say it's been, it hasn't really grown, or, I mean, Louise is here as treasurer of Durham. From a membership perspective, outdoor soccer groups there, it's been about 29,000 members. I think that, Louise, I could say it's been pretty stable from a membership perspective and from athletes playing the game. I think more importantly, though, is that for the kids who get multiple touches on the ball, they become better at the game, a little more confident, a little more proficient, and good.
I mean, specifically in that age group, are we seeing?
Has it grown, or?
Well, you know, the U10s, are we keeping them in U11 and keeping them in U12? Like Bolton was talking about, that they're actually seeing a retention of those kids, which shouldn't mean a net gain for the overall.
In Durham, they've done that. I'm not aware of any reduction or any concerns, other than the fact that some clubs have embraced it and some haven't, because of those dynamic personalities that are within the game. And that's where we need to collectively come together and say, let's collectively work together and move forward.
Ron, what age is it at?
It's that the 99 has been played at 10, 11, and 12 in Durham.
And what about other districts?
I'm not sure. I'm not that. I don't know if Peel
Is
has
in
been
Scarborough and Cossin?
Scarborough and Cossin, because they played in the DSL, the Durham Soccer League. But it's mostly been 8, 9s, and 10-year-olds. And
Essentially soccer league.
it's been there about 3 or 4 years, I think.
Caesar, you have a question?
I have a question. Cesar Tripodal, York Region Soccer District Administrator. I'm on the positive side for long-term player development. I get inside information from my district, my president, Bobby, so I know what's going on. But I also have an earful from the telephone from coaches who hear street talk. I know that Bobby's been doing a great job at the district in educating the technical directors regarding long-term player development. But what I'm missing out on is the communications factor to the end user, to the coaches. When is this coming? Is it true? They don't tell me anything. Well, I really can't tell them, you know what, talk in sense, I can't speak to your technical director or your club. Go and ask them. They're the ones that are feeding you that information. The biggest problem I see is communication factor from possibly the OSATv, either in a paper which is legible, that people understand as to what long-term player development is, when is it going to be implemented, and basically, yes, it will affect certain age groups at a certain period of time, and the kickoff time is D-Day. So they know what's going to happen with it. Will it be 99? Will it be 77? At what age group? 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13? They have no idea. No one else seems to get those phone calls with me. And here I am trying to tell them as best as I can what it is, but I really can't give a definite answer.
Yeah, further to Caesar's comments, we just asked the question, how many people here really have a club feel that they have a true understanding, or believe a true understanding of long-term player development, and there was only one. And so I just talked about is that what we have to do, we have to collectively improve what the awareness of long-term player development is. We recognize that. And the district, and Caesar, you're not the only one. We've heard this from other districts and other individuals, and also the only thing we can say right now is that after March, once we have that working group together, we will have a statement. But if you go to the Canadian Soccer Association, you go to our own website, www.ontariosoccer.net, you will find a copy of the Wellness to World Cup program. It is what it is. It will not be an specific Ontario model within that. The information is there. The challenge is, what's the rollout? When are we going to move ahead? And there are some things that we're still discussing with the Canadian Soccer Association. There is a meeting this week, the 14th, 15th. The CSA's Player Development Committee or Technical Committee is meeting. From that, we'll get another update of where we are. So we're working hard, and we will be working hard to get that information out. And certainly, if a district doesn't feel they have all the information, they should just give us a call. We'll provide them with that information so that they have that answer.
Okay, I think that exhausts long-term player development. We have a number of other topics. I'm going to move on to a topic that's really topical at the town hall in Hamilton. It's called under-8 soccer. It starts off, there appears to be different rules in every district. Some districts have inter-club under-8 leagues. Other districts have under-8 inter-club leagues with no standings. Other districts do not permit any under-8 leagues. Some districts don't even permit their clubs to play exhibition games against each other under-8. So there's a real disparity. What's your district doing about under-8s? And what's the OSA doing about under-8s? So we'll start off with our districts, and then we'll go to the OSA. Andy?
In North York, we have to admit we did have under-8s last year. We shouldn't have had, but we did. There's a great demand still. People still want that age group to still compete at a competitive level. Following the long-term player development, though, it's sort of kept at the club level. So this year, North York is not having under-8s. I hear other districts are, but we decided not to pursue and stay the status quo. What the OSA is advises to do. So no under-8s in North York. We decided to leave it at the club level. Then we start developing role players at that level.
I think the tradition in the York region has been to try to find a way to play competitive soccer as early as possible. And I think when the clubs have their way, they start at 4 years old. And so as a result, we had a very competitive league starting in under 8. We've done that for the longest I've known it. Last year, we made the first step to take scores and standings out of it, and it met with a lot of resistance, frankly. That is continuing this year. It's being expanded now, as Bobby has touched on, with 9-a-side, and I think going forward we will see the end of under 8 in terms of a league structure. But the whole idea of what we're calling our 8s and 9s now is a development league. We break it into 4 periods where the coaches actually stop play after, I think it's now 14 minutes, Bob, and have the ability to talk to the kids. We're working with our referees to call it lax the game, if you will, and be more educational out there with the kids. So we're looking at it as being more of a development thing for 8s and 9s, and I think that going forward that will carry into probably 10 and 11 next year, Bob's at the end of it.
So Russ, is it fair to say the greatest challenge might be mom and dad?
Oh, there's no question.
That might be our greatest challenge, right there in mom and dad. And how do we communicate and touch that group?
If it's consistent across the province, then mom and dad have no say. When different clubs do different things, we lost kids to another club because we didn't have a competitive program.
So you're really pushing for consistency,
Consistency.
district club to club.
Right.
And I think I'll rearrange the question for Guy to a different angle. What's the OSA going to do about the inconsistency in the application of this rule?
Well, I'm going to turn moderator down in a second. Bruce, I'm going to flip that question back to you. But long-term player development, and particularly at that youth level, the youth level we talk about the concept of physical literacy, which you're all probably familiar with. It's about the different stages of any child and how they touch and feel the ball at that particular stage. And that's one of the challenges of breaking away from the winning and losing, the actual playing a game, to the actual learning about the game. As then once we learn about the game, or once the children learn about the game, then they can get ready to play the game. And that's one of the challenges when the parents want their kids to play the game and be able to keep score, versus the long-term basis of a long-term player development model with physical literacy. And literacy is, in a traditional educational environment, is reading, is learning to read, and that gives you the basis to be able to study and learn for the future. Well, physical literacy is really about run, jump, throw. Run and take a ball. Run and be able to understand your physical capabilities and have that been able to be coached and be trained. And so in York Region, they're breaking it down every 14 minutes. They'll take the kids aside and they'll explain the game to them instead of just letting them run and have free play, which, basically, looking at the age of most people, some people in this room, that's what we did as young people. We just went to the field and played. We didn't have a coach, and we just went and enjoyed the game, throw down a couple of jackets or something, and that was it. We tried things. today we have the opportunity of knowing everything that's going, that we have a greater resource that we're able to help the kids learn the game from there. Now, within our rules and regulations, we do have policies regarding under-8 play. And Bruce, I'm going to ask you to comment on that just to reinforce what our policy is, because every now and then we do get an email from a district or particularly from a district saying that this is happening, what's the status? And so can you reconfirm what the board of directors has approved regarding a policy for under-8 play?
The bad cop's supposed to go before the good cop. We're reversing here. Yeah, our rule is no inter-club league play at under-8. That's an OSA rule. It's been in effect for 3 years. We know districts are struggling with it. A lot of districts didn't know that. Some districts went cold turkey, just had under-8 leagues. Hamilton, Peel Halton stopped them dead on the spot. Other districts are phasing them out. And rather than spend a lot of time on it, LTPD is going to address it. And certainly in LTPD at under-8, there's not supposed to be any team identity. So how can you have a league if there's no team identity? You're supposed to be playing with different players every week. So 1 week I'm on Williams' team, next week I'm on Guy. So how can you have a league if there's no teams? But anyway, that's our rule is quite clear: no under-8 inter-club competition. All leagues at under-8 have to be within a club only. And when there's small little clubs who can't have a league, they're allowed to go together for the health center.
So, Bobby, can I ask you again, as being a resource, just to talk about what physical literacy actually is? Because Bruce had just mentioned that maybe in one week he'd play with William, the next week he'll be on my group. Is it my team or is it my group? But what's the purpose behind that?
Should I stand up?
Please stand up. Turn, face the crowd. Bow face.
The whole idea of it, and the sports scientists have identified, our children don't know how to move. They're stuck in front of the TV, they're stuck behind a desk for most of their lives, and they really don't understand how their bodies operate. Much as this guy mentioned, as kids growing up, we were climbing trees, stealing apples, running from the police, all that good stuff. Learning how our bodies move and operate. So really our children are coming into a sport at 4, 5, 6 years of age and haven't experienced how their bodies move. What happens when I do certain movements? How do I keep my balance? How do I jump? How do I move backwards? How do I move laterally? And we throw a ball at them at 6 and 7 and expect them, first of all, to learn how to move, and then secondly, learn how to move and control this ball. And it's way too much to ask them to do. The first thing they have to do is learn how their body operates, how it moves. So physical literacy, the active start, the first step of the 7 steps of long-term player development, that active start is just getting the children comfortable with their bodies and how they move, what happens. So before we get into any leagues and structure and put stress on them to win, they have to experience how their bodies work. So the physical literacy component, active start, fundamentals, is really the children experiencing and learning how their bodies operate. And then secondly, throwing a ball at them, which is really difficult to do. So it's that whole experience of the body, and then secondly with the ball.
44% of our membership is under the age of 12. It's about 110,000 boys and about 90,000 girls. This year from Ontario we placed 12 girls on the U17 national team that qualified for the World Cup. And most recently we had 10 boys on the U17 team that qualified for the World Cup. Develop it at the clubs, develop it at the provincial level. But with that amount of children at that age group, we believe that based on the physical literacy principles, the principles of long-term player development, and with good training with our coaches, to be able to identify the kids that are athletic with the ball out of their feet, and as we teach them to be athletic through the long-term player development program, we certainly believe that we have ample talent here to supply the national teams for those kids who want to go on to that particular level. I heard a stat the other day, there's 250 million professional athletes in North America, and about there's 250 million people playing sport in North America. There's about 6,000 professional athletes, and that's all sports. So we're only talking about a fine number when we talk about long-term player development from a national team perspective.
Okay, just
So, you touched on, sorry, you touched on the fact that this may be a hard sell to mom and dad. So is the OSA going to provide any material to help make that sale?
Yeah, the question was that this is going to be a hard sell to the community at large, particularly that mom and dad. And are we going to provide anything? The easy answer, of course, is yes. The challenging question is what and when. But that's what we've identified. We have to create this awareness. Because we have to tell people what it is. Then the education about what the impact is and how it's going to benefit. And thirdly, we have to execute. So we're still at that, we're still learning about what the awareness program is and what the impact is. But hopefully through a couple of initiatives that we have happening over the next couple of months, and particularly one that's starting at the end of this month, we'll have that information. Last year at our AGM, we hosted a full series of workshops on long-term player development. There is a report prepared, and it was on our website one time, wasn't it, Bruce? So it's there, but without telling, we would have told people it's there. If you came to our website, you would have found it. Getting back to Caesar's point, is that we have to engage the district board, that they're able to, when he gets the call, here is where I'm directing you to, or you can go here and you get that information. But we had to do a lot more than that too as well. And that's what evenings like tonight are about. For us to hear some feedback, but also to give a little bit of information that you can go back and then maybe you can come to our website. And if you need someone to come to your club, you're working with the district, prepared to do that. Working with the district associations at president's meeting, where the districts have their own technical directors meeting where we'll have people out. We'll have our new chief technical officer on in the next couple of weeks, hopefully pending some immigration issues that we're working with. And then we will come out with those plans and that communication information for you.
Okay, thank you. We're back on long-term player development. We've spent an hour, very good topic, very well spent, an hour well spent. We have about an hour and a half left. So I want to move on to maybe a couple of easier questions, I hope. High performance player development. How does my son or daughter get identified for the district team, the regional teams, the provincial teams? So we'll start off with our district presidents. How do I get my child onto your district team? Start with
First of all, the club probably identifies the player, and this volunteers the player. Hopefully the coach lets the player go. And we found that an issue always is that the club develops the player along with the coach particularly. And then the coach says, well, why should I pass it on to the district program? Because that particular coach doesn't know what he's doing. So I'm the better coach. So that political issue aside, the club decides to give the district a coach, a player. And then we hire the coach, which develops the player as it goes through competition, and then the player gets ID. That's the way we're doing it for most districts.
In York Region, our technical director and his staff go around and actually scout the games that are played in the York Region League, starting, I think, Bobby at under 10. And they identify players. This information is passed back to the club and to the coach. And at under 12, we have what we call an identification program. We run 2 nights a week in the winter and 1 night a week in the summer, where they play together under Bobby and his staff's direction. Their club, they go back to their club, obviously, and they're identified then by the regional coach for our area. In this particular case right now, he's leaving us with Joey Lombardi. He's our regional coach who identifies them for the provincial program over there. We play, I guess as a region, Bob, we play at the end of the year with four other districts, and that's when Bob or Joey identifies the players. But it's a working together with our technical staff, with the club's technical staff. A player doesn't just come and try out. He's recommended by his club or he's scouted by our technical staff. And I'm really pleased with what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years, and a lot of players have come out. I believe this year, Bob, I think it's 80% of our clubs are represented now in the program, which is good, which is a big improvement, I think, from the past.
Bruce, can I just say something? I'd like to also speak. I know there are gaps in the process from the club to the provincial level. Just the other day I received a phone call from a club whereby provincial players or athletes who had been identified for the provincial program through a club shifted and moved from one club to another. So we have some gaps and some serious, we'll call them serious issues, but we have some gaps in the process that needs to be fixed. And when I say fixed, when a player is identified and moved into a program or moved to either a regional or provincial level, and they gets poached or recruited by another club, that's a huge problem that's out there right now, and we need to close that gap and fix that up. Again, I'm going to come back to the membership as a whole. We as an association, I don't believe, can fix that problem. There's no way we can govern, there's no way we can put enough rules. We have enough rules as it is, Bruce. We don't want to put any more rules in place. To me, that's an issue that needs to be addressed by the membership as a whole, whereby is when players are being identified and moved up through the regional and provincial program, there needs to be some ethics, some codes of ethics to allow those athletes to train at that level, to compete at that level, and then if they so desire and they want to return to their club level, then fine, they return to their club level. But that is another issue that we as a group need to touch on and need to work on moving forward. I just wanted to share that. This type of venue is an opportunity for us to identify where the gaps, where the shortcomings are in the system. We need to be transparent with each other, and we need to be honest with each other about what we're trying to correct and what we're trying to do moving forward. Especially for that, and there we are, we're back to that small percent again, that 10%. But again, that's another issue that needs to be addressed.
Once an athlete is identified at his or her district level, then they move to the regional level. Then each fall, we will have a camp where all the 7 regions participate in another talent identification program. Once a kid is selected there, we take about 40 in each age group, and then over the next couple of months, we'll pare it down to about 25 for each age group. Now, 25 doesn't seem to be a large number for the number of athletes we have playing in the province to be just hothoused on our provincial team. Now, I mentioned earlier, we've done quite well with 12 women on our women's team and 10 men on our under-17 team. And that's sort of the first group to go move ahead, because the system we have in place now is one that we started in 2004. So we're just like 6 years into it. So those kids would have come in that first series of what we've pushed through. But what we're looking at is the challenge that not every athlete has a chance to participate in the program, maybe because of distance, maybe because of travel. Is that right now that really their home base operates from the Ontario Soccer Centre. Some of the athletes will travel in 4 times a week. And if you happen to be from Ottawa or Windsor or somewhere up north, then just throw those areas out there for the challenge. They may not be able to make it every Tuesday and Thursday or whatever that twice a week during the week is for them. And then they have to come in on weekends. And some just come in every second weekend. I know one parent who drives his daughter down from Sudbury every week. That's a long program to go through. So what our technical committee is looking at is how do we evolve from this? And Ron talked about the gaps and talking about how we work with leagues. One of the things that we are considering is a standard-based club system. That clubs would be able to, based on a set of standards that are under development or under discussion for development, that a club could apply, and then that club will become a host for some of the better players in the province. And then from there, that's where we'll select our provincial team. So we are migrating away from what we have now to something a bit more inclusive. It's not just about that late bloomer, but it's about providing that opportunity. Again, with 110,000 boys and 90,000 girls, just selecting down to 25 or 40 each year, we know that's a challenge. And so we are reviewing the system of how we develop it. And we'll continue to do that, and it's as our technical committee and as we start to seek some of the input. And that's some of the input I was talking about a little earlier on of how we're going to do this through our strategic planning exercise, that we can make a recommendation back to the board of directors overall of how we provide opportunity for kids to play on our provincial team And ultimately, going to the national teams with the national team center here in Ontario, that we work really closely with the Canadian Soccer Association, so that those kids have the opportunity to move through the next pathway of their development.
Any comments or questions from the audience on district teams, regional teams, or provincial teams?
And maybe one other comment, just as a green lighted issue. Why don't the coaches move with the athletes as well? I just throw that out there as a green lighting issue. Why isn't we just look at the players? Why aren't the coaches moving as well in developing their skills and skill sets as well as the players?
So you're talking not about the coaches moving with the kids from team to team. You're talking about coaches improving their capacity as coaches.
Moving through the system, not a league or team, but through the system.
So that under-9 coach becomes a better under-9 coach.
Correct.
Versus that under-9 coach going with a team for 6 years.
Right. Could you have 2 homes versus 1? I guess it's right. This is a green lighted issue.
Moving on to a new topic, liability insurance. What liability insurance do we need for clubs, and for the board, and our administrators, and our team officials working for our clubs? And then the second question was just general liability. And the second question is, do we need directors and officers liability insurance, and why? Who would like to start?
Through the Ontario Soccer Association, we provide a couple of different types of insurance. We provide player insurance through the registration. We also provide overall liability insurance for districts who make decisions regarding the implementation of the rules of the game. Clubs are required to have their own liability insurance. And of course, you would have that for your own protection. We have had a case where an individual in a club had lost their house because the club didn't have directors and officers liability. The individual was personally sued. So as a board member of a club, you do have a fiduciary duty to that particular club with regards to the decisions which are made at that club. So I would encourage each one of you, if you do not know that you are protected through a directors and officers liability, I would encourage you as soon as possible to go back to your club and make sure to check to see if you have it, and then make sure you have it. Now, liability insurance comes in a couple of different forms. The directors and officers liability is about decisions you make. There's club liability with regards to the facilities which you pay on. Is the facility safe? Are the bleachers safe? All those types of things, and those tend to be third party because you tend to lease from maybe a municipality or a private sector group. Make sure that that private sector group has also liability insurance. So if someone's sitting on the bleachers and the bleachers break, that you are indemnified for that because you could be held liable if you did not come and inspect the facility and some things along those lines. We provide protection for our referees in those situations. We provide protection for the districts in some of those situations. But I would really encourage you to make sure you go and look at that because we would hate to see that happen. We have a case right now in front of us where two clubs played an exhibition game outside of, without getting any approval, and there's an athlete got kicked in the head. The parent is suing. There's a number of people been sued for $3 million. And we're not quite sure where this case is going to go because first it was unsanctioned. Therefore, since it's unsanctioned, the referee didn't have any insurance. The teams will not, do not fit under our insurance program. The coaches do not fit under our insurance program. So you do that at your own risk. So you need to make sure that when you're looking at directors and officers liability or club liability, that you have that. And then there's a consequence if a team or club does something outside the rules and regulations. If you approve something that's incorrect, well, then your directors and officers liability will take care of it. However, you don't make a decision, as in this case, maybe not have the opportunity to make a decision, there could be some liability.
Question of clarification in terms of OSA insurance. Are all the coaches covered under insurance? Who exactly is covered in this?
Liability insurance, so if there's
For injury.
Yeah, if there's an injury on the,
On the
accident
field.
insurance,
Yeah.
coach gets injured,
Yeah,
yeah, the coach would be.
during the game. Oh,
Yes,
right.
yeah, the coach would be insured.
Okay.
But more importantly, the coach's liability insurance. A lot of these serious injuries in games, the coaches are always sued, the referees are always sued, and the club, so that's provided. And our district administrators last week was interesting. A number of our administrators are named in lawsuits. I think Caesar's gone down in history for the most lawsuits. We also
That's
Linda
awesome.
Goldfield. And I've been sued a couple of times. In fact, we share one lawsuit. So I didn't even know anything about it, but it's amazing how you can be sued. And it's good to know your organization has coverage and takes care of all the legal fees. Moving on to another topic. This one is not as easy, I guess. It depends. It's called Governance of Soccer. The CSA just agreed to a new governance structure. What steps the OSA taking to reorganize its own governance structure? And will it result in the reorganization of its board? And will the governance structure facilitate voting power based on the number of registrants so that directors understand the complexity of governance issues in large districts? So I'm going to pass that on to Ron.
So I had the privilege of this year in my first term to be part of the CSA governance change. And it was quite an experience to be part of that process. And of course, well, hopefully you're all aware that the governance portion or the governance model of the CSA has changed, and that they are working towards by 2014, 2015, to move away from having a representative, i.e. a representative of a province or president of a province sit on the board, to more of a strategic type leadership process whereby it's business partners, it's business leaders, people who have a huge impact in the community, people who are skilled in the whole issue of setting up the soccer component or football component moving forward. And of course, I was asked the question, well, what's happening at the OSA? Well, our current structure is we have 27 people who sit around the board table at the OSA. And our governance task force, being led by Dan Tomlinson, we are currently looking at our committee structure. How does the committee serve the association as a whole? And at the same time, we'll go through a process of looking at our current structure. Does it need to change? Does it not need to change? A lot of people talk about it's really about the people who determine, structure really doesn't make that much of a difference. It's actually the people and the skill sets of the people that move the association and the game forward. So you'll hear some discussions. I know at our AGM we're going to have some symposiums. There'll be a governance symposium at the AGM where the governance task force of the OSA will be involved. And we have some clubs coming forward who have restructured. Some districts have downsized from 14 down to 9 to allow them to function a little bit better. There have been no definitive decisions made with the governance or the structure of the OSA. But as soon as you mention it, or as soon as you speak to it, it creates angst, it creates fear, and people think that they're going to be cast aside. Well, to not look at the structure would be the wrong thing to do. We should look at it, we need to educate and communicate ourselves, and look at what's going to work best for us moving forward. So you will hear some more, you will see some more communication through the website and through some different types of education, communication, symposium processes. At the CSA level, they've moved down to a board of 14. We were fortunate enough to have Dan Tomlinson, who was part of the Constitution Committee that went through that process. So Dan brings a lot of skill set to us as a group in helping us look at where we are and how we want to be formed moving forward. At the end of the day, from my perspective, the clubs are the foundation of the association. And again, the clubs need to give us a little bit of input in what kind of role, what kind of responsibility we're providing to the club members moving forward. So that change, that discussion, all that is coming forth. And certainly just want to say that watching at the CSA level, at the national level, there was quite a bit of angst and quite a bit of concern, but I think looking at it from an OSA perspective, communication, education, and discussion are the keys moving forward.
Quick question. I assume changes to the board would be carried out under the current voting system. So the
It
people
could, it may not, Ernie. I think it's way too early to have those discussions or to be thinking that way. I think what we want to look at is how effective is the association and what we're doing currently. Well, from my perspective, there's a number of silos that are out there, and how can we collectively draw the silos? Do you change the structure or do you change the people? Those are the types of discussions that we need to have moving forward. We're 110 years, it's our 110th birthday this year, and so there's 110 years of history and 110 years of legacy there. And you know, when I told my grandfather I was going to do this with a house, my grandfather said, over my dead body. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get what I wanted to do at my granddad's house until he moved on, with all due respect. But that's another issue for us moving forward. And I think that the other issue that we should mention is that the clubs are becoming much more sophisticated. There's a lot more resources, a lot more financial component within our clubs. And our clubs are also looking at their governance structure and governance model to see what's going to be effective for them moving forward. So this is a time when there's some change occurring. And with change, there's always the issue of where do I fit, or how do I fit, or who's going to get cast aside. That's not how we're looking at it moving forward. We're looking at, we want to become more effective as an association. We want to become more efficient. We had just came out of a board meeting. My executive members were here, and it was definitely an engaged meeting where we talked about just alone committee structure and how committees function and what their role and what their terms of reference are moving forward. So those discussions will continue, and it's critical that coming out of that, the board members who represent your districts keep you informed and keep that line of communication open and direct to you all the time, so that there is no concern that there's an underlying movement or there's an underlying issue with respect to governance and governance change.
And the district presidents have any comments on the minutes? We'll start with Russ this time.
Well, I guess the one thing that I have learned, I tend to be somewhat impatient when it comes to things. I like to see things move ahead quickly, and what I've had to learn here is that, to pick up on Ron's comment, this organization is 110 years old. I don't think it's had any major reform in the last 30 years, and I would just ask you the question, how much has the world changed in the last 30 years? And having said that, also what compounds it, I think, for the Ontario Soccer Association is 30 years ago, and Guy touched on the size of the organization 30 years ago. We've gone from being, frankly, a third world sport here in Ontario to the premier sport in Ontario. And we have not, I don't believe, kept pace with that. And I think when you start talking change, you really do get people upset. You're talking about people who got out of bed on the left side for 30 years, and now you're going to tell them to get out of bed on the right side. And that's hard. So this is going to be, as Ron said, and Guy has said many times, this is a process. It is being worked on. We do have a good leader in Dan. He did a great job, I think, with the CSA. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of this start to roll out. And all of you need to be engaged in this process. I speak for York Region. I represent York Region, but I represent 15 youth clubs, and they are a very aggressive group. And they are a very advanced group. In some ways, our clubs have surpassed us, in my opinion, in many ways. And we need to bring everybody together and work at what's going to work, not necessarily decide whether it's going to be a policy board or a certain kind of board. We have to come up with a model that is just going to make us better, that's all, and more effective. I think that's the challenge, is being effective.
Well, we are willing to go through the process and see if the proposed model or any type of model being proposed will, I guess, better the game totally in the future. But I just want to bring this caution is just because a system will work at that CSA level doesn't mean it'll come down and work amongst the districts because, you know, being far away from representation, it might distance the groups further than they might be in now. So it's very essential that we look at the communication amongst districts and the OSA instead of furthering the gap. So that is a bit of caution that we should look at.
Yeah, governance is not necessarily about the model. It's about the process. It's about how we govern as an organization. Dan, would you like to say anything with this question, or would you like to? I mean, the question, as you know, is around governance, and we talked about what's happening at the CSA. The question earlier on was, will the voting structure? Ron's answer was something to a question around, will the voting structure change? But maybe you'd just like to give a little bit of an overview of the current thought process. Is that putting you on the spot? I mean, I know it is, but why don't you come up? Come up.
No, I'm fine.
Yeah, but
Speak loudly. Speak loudly.
I was trying to turn.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You'll be on camera. Thanks.
Come over here, Representative. Come on, Bunch.
Well, I think the gentleman who spoke before me have actually summarized it quite correctly. It is the time to consider evaluating the governance model of the OSA. It is time to put in place a model that suits the OSA membership, because at the end of the day, that governance model is going to serve them. It is not correct to assume that what is best for the CSA is best for this organization. In the work that I did with other members of the CSA Constitution Committee, it was extremely challenging because there was a great reluctance to change. Therefore, there was a great reluctance to discuss what people wanted and what they felt would serve them best. And what the Task Force on Governance will do is actually try and understand what, of all the different scenarios that are out there for the governance model, what perhaps is the best, perhaps it's the best model, but it would be my expectation that we will have to offer different options, first to the board, then to the membership, and I would not be shocked to learn that there will be something somewhere in between, that each person who wishes to weigh in on this will have different points of view, and part of the problem is you have to get at least 2/3 of your membership to agree on something so you can get the appropriate bylaw changes made. And so initially probably you'll have something that's probably not the gold standard of the Cadillac, or it might be more like a Chevy Impala, but at least it's a start, and then over time you make it better. It takes a special kind of person to stand up and say, I'm going to vote myself off the island because I think it's the best thing for the organization that I'm with. And so I'm not saying that anybody is going to be asked to leave, but if ultimately we're going to change, that means the current structure will change and people have to agree that they're no longer going to sit there.
There was a revolution started in the United States many years ago over basically no representation, no taxation type of thing. And I would envision that people who are very passionate about their districts, very passionate about what they bring to the game, what they believe they can bring to the governance of the OSA, are perhaps going to be reluctant to say, well, I just sent them a check for $50,000, but I'm going to have no one there to help decide how that money's spent. So the only commitment that I would make to you tonight is that the Task Force of Governance will do an evaluation. They'll present options, and then it's going to be a matter of, over time, finding something that the majority of the people can support. At the CSA, at one moment in time, you had representation of roughly 40% of the membership who steadfastly supported one model and were not prepared to move, and you had the other 60% prepared to accept a different model. At the end of the day, what you have now is a model that's based on both sides moving to something they could live with at the start, and we were able to get some things put into place that said, okay, this is the start, but there will be other things that will transition. And as Ron said, by 2014, they may have the Cadillac, and they also will need the people who will be able to operate the Cadillac, and that will be the other challenge that's involved.
Thanks, Ted. Paul?
Just a question, really. Are you doing it through a strategic planning process, or is it going to be independent of a strategic planning process within the OSA? And I just put that out there just as an idea rather than anything else. Because if there's going to be such a shift, perhaps it may be more beneficial to utilize a strategic planning model and process to alter your governance. And you may then bring in more of the relevant stakeholders for the governance and create it through that model of a process rather than simply a task force and a committee presenting options.
Well,
it's just an idea.
What has actually occurred here is a number of years ago, the board at the time was concerned about the operation of the OSA, and there were surveys done involving the board, others. But the board at the time said we do not want to address the structure of the board. We want to look at anything but the actual structure of the board. And a consultant was brought in. They were the professionals that helped guide the surveys that were done, the collection of opinion and comment, albeit from a relatively small number of people, but and conclusions were drawn. And using the mandate they were given of not evaluating the structure of the board, they came up with a number of recommendations on how to improve board efficiency and committees, etc. So the task force was tasked with a very focused review, and they started to work on that. And at the February board meeting of the OSA, the board as it's now currently composed said perhaps the committee's hands were tied and they are looking at too narrow a group. So I'm saying all this to say that you're spot on that there's a need to get ideas and input from a lot of people. And I'm hoping, in fact, that as this goes on, there will be a place on the OSA website where people can see what's going on, and perhaps even a blog created where people can start to get dialogue. But What we're talking about, looking at it in much greater detail is, what, about 10 days old? So,
No, I realize that. That's why I brought that up. It did seem as though sort of the original task force hands was a little bit too narrow and focused, and perhaps if your scope has now been broadened and your authority to sort of look further now exists. One good mechanism that all of them is to utilize a strategic planning process with governance experts to help you through the process and bring in as many stakeholders you can in that process. It won't be a short and quick process, but hopefully it may get you over the hurdle of kicking a Chevy down the street for a couple of years until you get to the Cadillac, and you may be able to get to something better a little bit quicker. It may take you a little longer, but it may be well worth the effort. It's just an idea.
Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks, Dan. I'm going to move on because we're running out of time here. Next topic, if anybody has any questions, so far we've used all the questions from the last town hall. There are questionnaires here. If somebody wants one, we can give you one. We'd like to get some questions from this group as well. The next topic is district associations. Every district appears to have its own set of rules. This includes the structure of clubs and membership issues. Some districts have moratoriums on new members, while other districts accept every club applicant. What are the rules in your district association with respect to clubs and members? What can the OSA do to achieve more consistency? So the first question will go to Russ and to Andy. What are the rules in your district with respect to clubs and members? What's a club in your district? How do you define it, structure it? And what about your membership criteria? And then we'll get into the consistency issue. So Russ, you want to start this time?
In York Region, I think we're the only district that actually divides the geographical area into territories. And in York Region, there are 16, soon to be 15, territories, boundaries, if you will, and each club has their territory. So one would ask, how does one become a new club in York Region? And the answer is, unless one of those clubs gives up their territory, there isn't a way in to be a youth club currently in York Region. The only way, if a group wants to start up something, they would affiliate with an existing club. Now that's for, oh, I'm sorry.
Who go can't?
Sorry, you go, can't hear me?
Oh, I can't hear you back here, sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm standing too. In York Region, do I have to start? You didn't hear any?
No, I heard the beginning.
Okay. Tell me where I left off there. Where'd you lose me?
After the second word.
Okay. In York Region, we use the geography. We are, I think, the only district that, in fact, has boundaries for all of our clubs. So we have 16 boundaries or territories, and so the geography is all carved up. There is, if you will, the only way in for a new member then would be if one of the existing clubs was to either give up their territory, decide not to be a club, etc. So now, why was that done? In the wisdom of the forefathers, I believe that there was back in the day there was a lot of feuding and fighting going on. And I think you were there. No? Is that before you? Okay. And so they created this system, and it's carried on. And as you know, constitutions are membership approved and passed, and that is our constitution, and that's how we're structured. And there's never been any move to change that in York Region, and it has, by and large, worked. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yep, that tells us about yours. Okay. Andy?
In North York, it's a little bit different because of an older, mature district along with the city of Toronto and Scarborough and GTA. What has happened is in North York, and I believe it's probably the same in Toronto, clubs through evolution have sort of inhabited certain areas of the city and formed, I guess, their house league, which in turn, people usually go and play in their backyards there, going around the city. So through evolution, these clubs have formed, and there's a few clubs that come and go, and And that's all depending on the programs. If a club doesn't have a strong program, at the end it sort of disappears because it has no reinforcement of players and their system doesn't grow, so eventually it disappears. The way we look at membership in North York is, you know, we have certain guidelines, and you must have a house league and a certain amount of teams to support the structure. And what happens from there on is we look at if they meet all the criteria, and as long as they don't interfere with a particular club in the area, because we have another criteria that looks at facilities. So if there's too many clubs in one particular area, then it puts a strain on the facilities. So those are the criteria we look at. On top of that, there's the residency rule that sort of keeps everybody contained in one particular area, because Parks and Rec even encourages the residency rule as well. So all those criteria come into play, and then we review if there's room for another club. But usually we, through Parks and Rec, criteria, we're obligated to look at everybody's application that comes in as a club. It's not, we can't say, well, we can't accept it because Parks and Rec says if a particular new club or participant wants to come and join an organization, or we should give them the right, or offer them the right to look at their application. So that's how we sort of govern that area of the city.
And as I mentioned, the question that some districts have moratoriums. I believe there's about 5 or 6 district associations, just a moratorium. No new clubs, no youth, no senior, no clubs at all. We also have districts where rules such as having house leagues is not in there. You go to a number of districts where you have your competitive clubs, just run competitive, and the recreational just run the recreational. So there is this different type of club in different parts of the province. And so this is when we talk about consistency. And the question now is inconsistency a problem? And should we be striving for consistency and having something standard in each district? We'll start with the OSA, and then we'll ask the districts. Who would like to start? Guy, Ron?
I'm going to ask that question again just so I can...
Okay, we recognize that all the districts are different. They all have different rules. They all define their membership differently. Some districts, everybody gets in as a member. Andy just mentioned in North York, if the Parks and Rec want someone to be involved, they let them in. Other districts have a closed shop. They have geographical like York. We have 5 or 6 districts with moratoriums. We have some districts the club has to have house leagues. Other districts that don't. And we have districts who struggle to get 4 youth teams in their club. And so all these different shapes and sizes. Is this a problem, having this inconsistency? Should we be striving for consistency? And how would we achieve that if that was what we wanted to achieve?
One of our challenges as a home office in delivering activities and services all throughout the province is that we are really working from 21 different platforms through our 21 districts. And that means we have to tailor some of our programs that we would offer to meet the needs of that particular area. The districts associations are independently incorporated. So from a board perspective, and that's when I talk about the Ontario Soccer Association this time, from a board perspective of the home office or of the provincial association, the board does not have the authority to be able to dictate within the districts how they recruit members or how they accept members or how they engage their members. What we are able to provide is guidelines of operating structures, such as our club bylaws, such as our screening and harassment. Those types of programs is things that we can impact down to a district level. I think one of the challenges within the districts, in our organization right now, is the maturity of the clubs, the majority, the growth and development of the clubs. And also, what we've more recently seen is the splintering of break-off clubs, or someone says, I'm not happy where I am here now, I want to go somewhere else, and then forming a club outside, and the impact that it is having on particular facilities. We work with a couple of districts where we're starting to see that grow a whole lot, or being challenged a whole lot, where they're knocking on the door of the local municipality saying, look, we're taxpayers too, or we're taxpayers as well, and we deserve to have some type of facility. We have a couple of cases where we have a dispute resolution mechanism where clubs or proposed clubs have actually used that device to determine whether or not they can become involved with the district. One of the challenges, the difference between Ontario and maybe what's happening in the States is that anybody can form a program down in the States, as here we have different methods all the way around. What we're trying to do through our rules is make it simpler for people to play soccer. And I think for the future, that is going to continue the impact of how we do that within the province. Right now, as an association, we do not have the capacity at the board level to dictate how a club, how a district operates. And I think, Bruce, that's just going to be a challenge for a while. I don't think there's any easy answer to that. I don't think it's a yes or no. It's one that each district needs to be able to work with to see what it needs to do to provide a service in its own community.
Well,
An idea, you touched upon it. Does the OSA have the capacity to perhaps have a formalized dispute resolution process to impose mediation where there's disputes within districts or within clubs within districts, so that it's mandated that you must go through the OSA dispute resolution process, and you have mediators who can address that, and or an ombudsman's office to deal with issues of complaints and and issues, and therefore instead of having these disputes lingering out there, you've got to formalize that you can impose upon districts, and you can impose within the OSA. It says this is the avenue of first recourse that you must go through, and you create that.
We actually have that. We have a formalized dispute mechanism program. You can either go through mediation, or you go through type of arbitration. Right? So that's already in place, and we would probably...
Is it mandatory? That's really my question. Is it mandatory?
It is. It only pertains to certain types of disputes, not all disputes, and it's mandatory. It's a condition of membership. It's a condition of club membership in districts. It's a condition of district membership in the OSA.
We put that process in 2005, 2006, somewhere.
I'm going to ask the districts to comment. Last week we had district administrators workshop. One of the things that came up there was how they handle different situations. And just like how districts govern differently, we also have it administered differently. Who's responsible for approving an exhibition game? So within the district, there's no problem, because district does it all the same way. It's when we get into inter-district competition, everybody's interpreting differently, and Caesar was part of the discussion, who's responsible for approving this, and who's responsible for approving that. So we now have districts who are administering OSA rules in different ways. And administrators, it was a problem. So I'm going to ask our district presidents how they feel about that. Russ?
Well, I affectionately tell the story of the first time I went to an OSA board meeting, thinking that I would meet 20 fellow district presidents, and recognized I was meeting 20 different countries. And that's what Guy is touching on. I think that going forward, just my personal opinion, I think we have to decide whether districts down the road are in fact branch offices of the OSA that will impact programs and services as we get more and more sophisticated, as clubs get more sophisticated and have more demands on the part of the OSA and its districts, or whether we're going to remain as 21 different countries. Now, I have a personal opinion on that, and it's the former rather than the latter. I would like to see us have a lot more consistency district to district. In my capacity as president of York Region, I have been trying to work with bordering districts who have common interests around the GTA. I recognize the game is played differently in the north, in the province, and to a certain extent in the west and the east, but around the GTA, I think that we can have a lot of consistency, and that represents about, 80% of the membership, 75% of the membership.
And so, yeah, I think it's a real issue. I hear Caesar, when I first met him, had tons of hair. And he does. He grows it long on purpose now, though. There's a reason. But it is an issue. And this it did come out of the district administrators workshop, that there is differences district to district on how we interpret. I think the standard line that is used more and more is, well, that's not the way I read the rules. And somehow we have to have better clarity on rules, and it's more definitive, it's easier, and there should be, in my opinion, consistency from district to district in how we do apply it.
Sorry, Bruce, did you say that there was an ombudsman's office or a position created? I don't think so.
No, we do not have it.
Might be an idea.
Sorry.
What I've seen over the last 20 years about the consistencies and inconsistencies is it's a lot of political maneuvering. It's always the case. Some clubs, they want to do it this way, so they have the influence of the board, and so on and so forth. So if we could ever become consistent, I don't know. I've never seen it happen. There's always political movements within districts. For example, the under-8s in York Region, you'll probably never get rid of it. In North York, we decided to get rid of it, and that's sort of the issues that evolve. It all depends on what is the sort of trend in the particular districts, and it's not a bad thing. You're sort of servicing the membership as a whole on what they want to see happen in the district, and there's nothing wrong with that. Standardization of rules should happen, yes, but there'll always be that interpretation of rules. And in soccer, that's sort of always the case. Everybody has their different interpretation. Look at how offsides work.
It's interesting. We had a question about under-8s earlier, and we get calls at the office. Our district won't let us play against each other. Won't let us play in leagues. And I'll say, well, that's an OSA rule. And they'll say, well, yeah, but the neighboring district's doing it. And and this is the type of thing that people use to play district against each other. To the point, one of our districts submitted a request for decision at our last board meeting because they wanted to control exhibition games between under-8 teams in their district. They brought forth a rule to make it mandatory across the province, even though they had the right to do it within their district. And the reason they did that is they didn't want their clubs saying, well, yeah, but they can get away with it. So it's this pointing at the other districts and, how come they can do it and we can't do it, which causes us a lot of problems. I'm going to move on to our next topic, which is called respect in soccer. We're going to ask Guy to talk about it, and then we'll maybe get a response from our districts. What's this program all about? How do we get involved? Are there plans to rewrite the codes of conduct to deal with unacceptable behavior on the sidelines, especially towards referees? And will the OSA, there's a specific question here, will the OSA make it mandatory for ref coaches that pass the NCCP online ethics test in order to continue to coach ref? Right?
The Respect in Soccer program is really a derivative of something called Respect in Sport. The Respect in Sport program is a derivative of, in 1997, Sheldon Kennedy, an NHL hockey player, spoke out about an abuse situation which he found with his junior hockey coach after many years of being in the NHL. The Hockey Canada at the time instituted something called the Speak Out program. When we did our strategic framework back in 2006, where we touched almost 2,000 people throughout the province, and we went to all the districts at that particular time, one of the aspects or one of the issues that kept coming up was we should have some type of Speak Out program. More recently, Sheldon Kennedy and his partners have been able to develop an online tool called Respect in Sport. It's something which Hockey Canada has adopted. It takes about 3 hours for a coach to go through. The coach will learn certain situations, certain behavioral situations of how they can modify their behavior to work with an athlete, particularly a young athlete, and also signs and see signs of when there may be an athlete in distress. We've tested that particular program in 2 regions and with a couple of clubs, particularly the regions of York and Durham Soccer Association, Regional Soccer Association, and a couple of clubs down in Soccer Southeast in the Kingston area. We have found that the program was really well received and really well endorsed. However, one of the comments that came back is that we would like, could we have possibly have the program called Respect in Soccer. So what we have done, working with the producers of this particular program, we've created a program called Respect in Soccer. It's an online program that coaches will be able to take. This year, the Board of Directors approved $120,000 to purchase 20,000 units of this particular program for all our coaches here, for 20,000 coaches here in the province. We'll be rolling that out in the next 6 to 8 weeks in terms of how we're actually going to distribute each one of these 20,000 licenses to the districts, and the districts will in turn work of how they're going to distribute that right down to their clubs. It takes about, as I said, it takes about 3 hours to do. You can go online at any time. You can do an hour one day, an hour the next day, 20 minutes, and the other 40 minutes to get to 3 hours. The program has been adopted by the Hockey Canada. They're starting to roll it out. The province of Manitoba has made it mandatory for all the coaches in Manitoba. The government of Manitoba bought this particular program and made it mandatory for all the coaches in all sports. This will be a service of the Ontario Soccer Association, which is the Ontario Soccer Association, and the districts in delivery of this program. Also with this program is something called it's a parent program. It's Respect in Sport parent program that the Calgary Minor Hockey Association, if you had a chance to read the paper maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, Calgary Minor Hockey made this mandatory. Anybody who wishes to register their son or daughter in Calgary Minor Hockey had to do this. This one's about an hour long, and it is also quite an interesting program. That program will be offered to us as an association, but it will not be provided by the home organization. That will be done by the district, by the club. So what we've done, we rolled out something called Show Your Respect, and we have some stickers around it. The Show Your Respect program was something that we launched last year. We were starting to find that there was a number of sideline incidents. They were starting to increase a bit more than what we've seen in the past. So what we did at Ontario Cup finals last year, we just put a little sticker on. Anybody came in, we asked them if it would be okay to put a sticker on, and it just said, Show Your Respect. The players wore it and the referees wore it too as well. We did get some really positive feedback from that. So the Show Your Respect program is our philosophy of how we wish people to behave, and then the Respect in Soccer is our educational tool. So that's something which we'll continue. We'll roll out in the next 5 to 6 weeks. We're still developing. It's still under development from a construction perspective in terms of the video and the site and everything along those lines. We're able to track the coaches that are able to do it. They'll be able to match up back with your club records or your coaching records to show that you've done this program. There is an ethics program that's also within and coming as part of the National Coaching Certification Program too as well. That's about an hour long. So one deals with behavioral modification, and through the National Coaching Certification Program that'll eventually come with our own long-term player development coaching model. There is an ethics program that coaches will be able to take as well.
I assume the program for parents is voluntary.
The program for that's really up to the clubs. And right now, the question was, is it going to be mandatory for coaches to do it? I would suggest probably this year it may not be, but you may see it getting at that particular level as we're trying to roll out the program. But the one for the parent one, that would be completely up to the club, and the club would just engage the folks that are producing this, and they move ahead on their own. whatever level of speed you want.
Yeah, hi, good evening. I'm Paul, I'm a referee. It's nice to see other referees here this evening. I'm a little disappointed, if I may say, that the only topic that it addressed referees, unfortunately, was respect on the agenda. I do have some other comments about referees that I want to bring up later. Dealing, I guess, with respect, because I know from a referee perspective, and I believe the other referees here will agree with me, over the last few years, we've sort of seen a decline in the respect that's been shown towards referees and officials, not just from players, but from coaches, fans, and unfortunately parents. A little perspective that was given to me, and I can't take credit for this, but there was a referee on the field between two teams, blue and white, and sure enough, every call there were complaints. Finally, there was a 50-50 call for a throw-in. He called it one way, in favor of the white team. Blue team argued. So he turned around, he says, okay, blue ball. Sure enough, the white team argued. Changed, says, okay, white team ball. Blue team argues. Changed his mind, blue team ball. Finally, both teams started yelling, and he says, make a call. His answer was, oh, so you want me to call the game? Fine. Let me call the game, and you play the game. Sure enough, not another word the rest of the game. It's a nice little commentary because, quite frankly, that's what's happening. You're seeing too much disrespect and conflict with referees' calls. And, I bring that up also from the context of, referee assaults. Referee assaults have unfortunately grown. And, it's not just necessarily a physical assault. It's also a verbal assault. And we're losing young referees. And we're not maintaining a lot of young referees. I mean, this is one reason, but because of the pressures that, they don't have thick skin, so they basically say we don't want to deal with this anymore. And I appreciate the education program, but quite frankly, this has been a long-standing problem that's been growing. And education certainly is one way to handle it. But if I may say, another problem is, or another, I think, manner of solution is sanctioning. And I don't think that we've done a good enough job of sanctioning offenders, either with length of offenses or bringing them forward, or in general dealing with the issue of respect. And to a certain extent, the respect also has to be from the referee's back. It's not just one way. I'm looking at it that way, but it's also referee's back. But in dealing with the issue of sanctioning players, sanctioning coaches, I mean, even the NHL has gone for that. For if you're putting somebody on the ice and there's a problem, coaches get sanctioned, and it can go up. You don't have to just stop with coaches, but you can go to clubs as well, depending on the nature and extent of the offense. I know the referee development committee has taken somewhat of a look at it, but I think well, okay, sorry, I guess they haven't. Renal no more than me, but I think it needs to be looked at. I mean, the whole issue needs to be looked at and dealt with in conjunction with education. We've tried education for a long time. It doesn't mean we stop, but at some point in time, the buck has to stop, and that's the way you're going to increase the retention of referees, or it's one way, because you don't want to lose them. Anyway, those are my 2 cents worth. I do have other comments about refereeing, but I'll leave that.
I have a little opposing view. I've coached for 22 years, and I haven't seen this increase in verbal abuse that you're talking about. I've gone to discipline cases, and to me the OSA penalties are too rigid. It's either 4 games or 6 months, which to me is a ridiculous difference. I think the OSA penalties have to give the discipline chairs a little more flexibility between 4 games and 6 months. I've also seen cases where referees have complained, coaches have got red cards, and frankly, there were ridiculous red cards. The discipline chair threw them out as being, what the hell? I think it's not a case of more referee abuse. I think it's more a case of more referees claiming abuse or reporting abuse. So it's the crime statistics are not the same.
I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on that.
Okay, and the topic, of course, is respect. And so I'm going to bring it back because there's still a number of topics and it's getting late.
Bruce, if I can say I'll take those comments back, but referees are a solid component of our game. And we will work to ensure that we provide that opportunity for development, for education of the players. That's one of the reasons why we've brought in the respect program. But we'll take that back as far as with regards to the officials. We have about 10,000 referees. We're training about 4,000 new referees every single day. And while we have not done exit interviews, I would suggest, and my gut tells me, that they've said, I just don't need this. I want to contribute to the game, but the pressures, and it could be from the players, it could be from the coaches, and it could be from the fans. But I think that's the reason why they're leaving the game. And that's one of the reasons why we want to go ahead with this particular program, because we believe that there is an increase. It may not be between player to player, but certainly on the sideline. We just want to nip this in the bud before, provide the opportunity to nip it in the bud before it grows.
Next topic, Toronto FC. TFC is recruiting affiliations with clubs around the province and trying to attract players under 14, under 18 to their own academy, and they plan to recruit down to under 8. In fact, Stuart Neely even confirmed that last week on Satanta, that they were going to go down to under 8 once they have their training center. Is this in conjunction with OSA programs, and how will this affect OSA player programs? Right?
We've had more recent discussions with Toronto FC regarding this particular program. With the expansion of MLS here to Canada, particularly the Vancouver Whitecaps and of course the Montreal Impact, there's a greater competition now for Canadian players to play in each one of those teams. TFC has been given a 50-mile recruiting radius from BMO Field. That's their protected area. While they may be able to go outside, well, I'm not quite sure. That's their protected area. So within 51 miles of BMO Field, you could have the Vancouver Whitecaps, or I know the Vancouver Whitecaps are able to recruit players in that particular area. Within the MLS structure, if you develop your own players, that does not count towards the salary cap, nor do those players go in the draft. So in traditional football status, you want to develop your academy. Your academy leads up to your reserve team, and your reserve team leads up to your first team, but those players are yours. So I think it's quite natural that they would look at some type of developmental program that's going to encourage a kid to be there. From the association's perspective, as some of you may recall, that a number of years ago we had a relationship with the Everett Football Club, and it was really from a technical development with a bit of business side. And we do not have that relationship with them right now. But what we are seeing is a growing discussion relationship with TFC. We would like to see that being a pathway for our boys to be able to play with TFC. It would be a thrill that sometime you would see 11 boys start for TFC as being a professional club here, that we're able to support that. So we have had this discussion with them. We still run our provincial team program, under 14, under 15, under 16. The kids that are, once they leave our program at 17, they tend to go with TFC, or they get the opportunity to go there. As far as TFC, and you look at what's going to happen with the Whitecaps, and you look what's going to happen with the Impact, they, as professional clubs, are going to start taking more responsibility upon themselves for player development. I attended a session with these teams back in 2007, and they believe that the professional clubs need to get engaged a whole lot more at the player development level. We have not had any discussions with them under 8. They are looking at 2 new training facilities, so we've had some discussions with Toronto Soccer Association to see how it impacts them. TFC already have a number of relationships with clubs. They've done that on their own, and clubs have engaged in that process on their own. As Bruce said, they're looking at developing their own training center. They're looking at 2 sites, one in York region and one in North York region. And I assume once they get that in place, they'll be able to move ahead. That's one of the reasons why they've hired Aaron Vinter and looking at the type of program that they would have had an IX or looking at that European structure. So I think that's really where their goal is. We are just having this type of discussion with them right now, and I deal with Earl Cochran on this particular case. And actually, Earl and I were supposed to meet with Charles Wyatt at the Toronto Soccer Association today to talk about some of those relationships. But both Earl and Charles were ill today, so I'm the only one to show up to the meeting. And actually, it was a pretty good meeting. Didn't get much done, but it was a good meeting. So hopefully that answers the question. I'll take any questions regarding that.
Any comments, TFC?
Can I ask a
Yes.
question? Guy, based on what you just said then, so if TFC are coming down to under 8, right, you're saying they're going to start at U8. We just earlier in the meeting discussed that we shouldn't be getting into soccer to, I think somebody saying 12 or 10. So I'm a little bit confused. I don't know about anybody else in the room, so forgive me for taking up your time, but I'm just trying to understand then. If as a district we're trying to encourage the clubs to stay with the mini soccer till under 12 for the long-term player development, is TFC going to be operating mini soccer, or are they going to be operating at under 10s, 11v11? Because if that's what's going to happen, then there's a lot of clubs going to lose the young players because they're automatically going to go to TFC. And I'll say that for a reason, because the long-term player development is interesting to hear right now. I don't know who else in the room can say the same thing, but as I said to Bruce before Christmas time, the long-term player development is going the way soccer used to be in this province when my son was 7 years old. He's now 29 coming up. So, we're going back 20 years, we're not going forward. But I just want to make sure I'm misunderstanding what you just said about TFC.
From what I know, Winnie, of seeing other professional clubs train, they invite kids in, they do not play in a league, they just provide training opportunities for them, almost physical literacy.
So it's like a private training center they're going to operate then?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be in the academy structure that we just approved.
And then how would that affect players like in Peel Halton then? Because those players, per that district's rules, allows them only to play for one organisation. Would the OSA mandate Peel Halton has to lift that rule so that a child is not being penalised the opportunity to be part of the TFC program?
I can't speak for TFC, but I'll surmise. Let me go there. I would suspect that they would have, it's almost like a soccer school, if I understand what some of the other academies do. They don't have training, they don't play games, they come in for a couple hours a week and they train. It's really about identifying that young athlete who has physical literacy capabilities with the ball to see if there's an opportunity that that particular athlete maybe have the skill set to move on to the next level. I will have to find the answer for exactly what they're doing with under 8, but I can only suggest they will be doing what I've seen some other professional clubs do.
Any questions, Susan?
Sorry. Toronto FC, is that a stand? Sorry, thank you. I'll enunciate and raise my voice. Is the Toronto FC standalone professional club registered to the OSA?
That's part of our discussion. Susan's question was the TFC, a standalone club registered directly with the Ontario Soccer Association. What our discussion was going to be with TFC is to ensure their registration in the district which they reside.
So how would that affect your problem with, let's say, Peel Halton?
No, not problem.
No, not when I say your question.
Yeah.
With Peel Halton, in the sense of saying, are they under the umbrella of the OSA at any given time by governance?
No, they report directly to the Canadian Soccer Association. That's as a professional club, that's where they go. However, as that's the first team, with the youth team, that's been our discussion with them, because right now they operate they have two teams. One's in the Canadian Soccer League, which reports which both of them actually, one plays in the first division of the Canadian Soccer League, and the other plays in the reserve. So right now, those two age classifications, those are the only programs are running. So they're directly under the affiliation of the Canadian Soccer Association at that level. Once they get down to a lower level, that was the opening of our discussion with the Toronto Soccer Association today to see where all that's going to fit and get a stronger understanding. While they've publicly said they're going to a U8 type of program, they've not enunciated what that program actually is. So I was trying to answer your question, Winnie, only knowing what I've seen some other professional clubs do, not saying what TFC are doing, because I really don't know.
But if they were to be a private organization at that level, they wouldn't be under the OSA's rules and regulations. Or would they? Or do they have to?
Yeah, I think we best wait to answer that question until we find out what program we're actually going to offer. Then I'd be in a better position to provide you feedback.
Thank you. At this point, a lot of speculation. I think the OSA is going to stay close to the scene and make sure that everybody's looked at.
Yeah. And when Bruce says the OSA, it's the OSA and the Toronto Soccer Association. That's the meeting. We're just providing the link between us and TSA.
Next topic is social media. I think a lot of people realize how powerful it is now. We have governments being overturned, and we've had misconduct incidents, and a couple of them have come up. That started off with comments on Facebook planning to injure another player, and there's a lot of things going on. There's cyberbullying, and in fact, just yesterday, the Old Firm Summit in Scotland, where the Scottish Parliament got involved in the Celtic Ranger dispute. One of the top things they're going to do is monitor the internet, because this is where it's all getting organized, all the violence. And so it is a very powerful tool. It can be very good, and also can be very negative. So the question is, what's the OSA going to do about preventing cyberbullying in internet social media sites?
This is not, of course, something that we encourage, but it is not something that we have the capacity to enforce. Within the educational system, when this question came up last time, my wife is a principal. So I sent her a note to say, look, what do you guys do within your own if something happens in school? And even within the school system, they do not have the capacity to do anything about it. All that they can do is report it back to the parents. So all that we would have the capacity to do is, if it came up, report it back to the club, and then have the club deal with the child or with the issue itself with either the individuals or the parent. It's probably something, well, it's not, again, something we do not encourage, but it's really, we do not have the mandate of how to do that.
Guy, would that not fall under harassment? Because all you have to do is print screen, and if anything, it stops the he said, she said. It's now in written form. So if there's ever proof of harassment, there you go.
Yeah, harassment has to be more than once.
Well,
harassment has to be continuous. It could fall there, but it has to be continuous. There has to be, now, and I'm going to go way outside my area of scope of expertise when it comes to a threat. Is a threat something that goes now in the legal system? that you report to the police and the police deal with it? Is that harassment, or is it about name calling or what we would traditionally think as harassment? Our harassment folks have looked at it, and again, at the end of the day, we should have a statement on it, but it's not something that we can manage. Unless it's continuous, then you can, but that's, it's a really broad scope and probably outside our area of expertise.
So, hi, so I'm in the sports marketing business, and as you mentioned, social media is really big right now. So my question is to you guys, so you were raising social media from a negative standpoint, so harassment and bullying. But what is the association strategy to build around social media? Meaning promoting the game, promoting relationships, or building around it. There's a lot of potential to build.
Yeah, as you would have noticed, we've just changed our website, and it's within that we do have some Twitter capacity and some Facebook capacity. And that's the area which we're going now, moving towards that particular area. We're developing that strategy right now. 79% of our membership is under the age of 18. And of course, every year it's still 79%. But then the folks who use social media are getting older. So in the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be all age groups that are going to be involved in that. So right now, we're just working on a process of how we're going to do that. So recently, I've been set up with a Facebook account and a Twitter account. I've just got to activate it. I got to get the courage to activate this thing for us to launch. But moving into that new communication, as we've talked about, creating that awareness, that's the way in which we see we're going to do it, through our new website.
Any other questions on social media? Okay. Next topic is OSA website. And what are the features and capabilities of the new OSA website? And how can our clubs and districts get involved?
As you're probably aware, as a service from the by the Ontario Soccer Association, you're able to have a website free of charge already with our association. We've moved to a new platform, and the new platform has opportunities for video content, and particularly opportunities for advertising content. So a club can move to the new platform. Right now, there's 4 carousels available from a video perspective. We would probably keep 2 from the OSA from a messaging perspective from the home office. The third one could be used by the districts, and a 4th one could be used by the club itself. The content on the website is really, it's user-friendly, and you can have your own content on that website. And what we're looking at right now, where you see show your respect, and today it's what's that new aspect of
Hall of Fame.
Forget their part.
Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame, yes. The Hall of Fame banquet is May 28th at the Liberty Grant. You're all encouraged to buy tickets for that. It's a great event. We have a number of people who have been inducted to the Hall. I digress. So what we have is that a couple of advertising banners there. We're working with an organization that will be selling actually advertising there, and then based on the number of hits that your club gets, if you use this particular website, you will get a rebate. So for example, if we get a sponsor, and I'll just make this up because I can add this way, we get $100,000 and your club has 10% of the hits, your club would get $10,000. And I just make that up in terms just to make it easier. But it is a vibrant platform. It's a new service that we're providing. And if your club would like some more information on that, all you do is let me know, and we'll have someone contact you to come along and show you the features of this particular new platform.
Okay, we're a little bit over time, but I do have one last topic. We left the light one for the end. It's called Ames. We heard that Ames was being discontinued. What is happening with Ames? What's replacing it? How's the OSA planning to service the clubs? And what does the future hold for OSA and technology?
Yeah, every chance I get to speak about Ames, first of all, I start off by making an apology. It was never meant to do, of course, we did not on purpose launch this program to cause the heartache that we've heard that this particular initiative started. We looked at our old platform. Our old platform is pretty much a standalone platform. It's one that we shared with a number of other sports by that provider. We were looking for a system that we could provide an integrative service that once a name had gone into the system, that you'd be able to use that system for a variety of other things. You can use it for tournament travel, you can use it for making teams, you can determine residency from it. There was a whole lot of issues that we wanted to do. Unfortunately, we were not able to deliver that. And again, we regret for the challenge that this has been for you. However, we moved ahead. We're 2.5 years into the project, and it was always at the end of the day, whether or not we would look at every 5 years, we tend to go to market with whatever major programs we have. We're 2.5 years into this program now, and while I think we're getting close after 2.5 years to having a registration system, we do not have an integrated registration system. So the board has agreed that we would step back, look at if we're going to move to a new platform, we made the decision that we will do some research to say that in the next 18 months or so that we would go back to the marketplace. We're looking at the depth and functionality that we want within the system. And the last time we did this, we did have a working group, and the working group included representatives from districts, representatives from clubs, representatives from that particular industry in itself. We did do a request for interest, where we had a number of companies express interest in making a bid. We did review these organizations, and then we selected a certain number to go back and make a request for proposal. Again, through a series of interviews with, again, a collection from individuals from clubs, leagues, districts, and again, industry experts, we came up with our current supplier. The current supplier is First Sport International. It provides services to the English FA, the English Rugby Union, the USA Rugby Union, the Irish FA, the Australian FA. The system works in other places. However, we believe because our rules and regulations here and everything that's within our system, we just weren't able to provide that independence that we were looking for to drive a new platform forward. So, we will continue to use AIMS for this year. We do not say AIMS too much around the office right now. It's just the information management system. We have a working group within the board of individuals who have a great deal of expertise in the technical area and have expertise in the operational area from a district and a club perspective. Working with a number of other individuals that will come from clubs and districts and leagues, looking at what level of functionality that we want within the system. Then we're going to look at whether or not we have, because we're in the database management business. We've done that. We're on our 5th system right now. And the reason why we're on our fifth system is not because all of them didn't work. It's just the evolution. The Ontario Soccer Association has been a leader in this particular area. It was one of the first ones in the country to have an automated registration system. It's just each one's matured all the way as we got here. This is really the first one that's really we've not provided the service that we expected to provide. So we'll look at whether or not we want to build one on our own, partner with someone to build one. Do what we do now is outsource and work with the group, or just outsource it totally altogether. So based on our review of what we do, again, from the functionality and depth we want to be, then we'll be making a recommendation back to the board of what's the next steps and where we go to launch, to provide a service that is workable and beneficial to the membership. Because right now there's a certain number of clubs that are buying their own registration system and looking at an upload. And we feel that's a real shame, because that's a benefit of membership, a benefit of the service, and we feel really challenged that clubs feel that they have to go and buy their own instead of investing that money back in the clubs and back in the development of soccer here in the province.
So do you have a 5-year contract with AIMS?
Yes, and it finishes in March of 2013. So what we're pretty well looking at, if we're going to launch a new system, it really has to be ready by the spring of 2012, and that's not too far away. And then looking at maybe implementing it in September, because that was our original thought, that we would introduce this in September 2008. But you've all heard that, you've all seen this movie before, and unfortunately, you know the ending too as well. It's not one of those movies that you can change the ending to fit your need of the day.
Any other comments on Ames? Okay, that concludes all our questions, and we are a little bit on added time right now, and so I would like to, first of all, thank the panel.
Do you have a question? Did I see you write a question? Since we're in extra time.
What can we do to better educate the coaches at under four, who are usually parents of a player on the team, to provide better coaching? We need to provide them with the information to offer better training and running practices as well as skill development. How?
Mr. Bradbury, we have 10 kids left over. Your daughter Heather's one of them. Will you coach? Gee whiz, I know nothing about soccer. I know nothing about coaching, but I'll do it. Well, that's okay. Here's a bag of balls and a book. Go ahead. And that's, when I say that story, I see people nod saying, that's how I got involved. And that's one of our challenges as Canada, is that when we look at physical literacy, we look at long-term player development, it's those individuals that freely give up their time, and we thank them very much for it, but are providing this development opportunity for our kids. Earlier I mentioned that we're looking at, we will be hiring a director of coach education, coach development / player development around those age groups. And we will be providing on our website an educational component too as well. Because in the back end of this site is something called Soccer Buzz. Soccer Buzz can be the educational tool where we'll have vignettes, we'll have service programs that we'll be able to provide. Our new CTO, once we're able to get that person in place, he has a expertise and he has a relationship in the past where they develop actual programs for you. And so I've spoken with him about that, about being able to transfer some of that information over. So what we plan to do is get this information up front. So it's not necessarily about certification at this level, it's about personal development. Providing that resource for that coach to put up his or her hand, or that sport leader to put up his or her hand and say, I need some basic information that's going to help me not just work with an under 4, but an under 16 and beyond that too as well. So this is something that's in the works, and I will make the comment, you'll see something in the next 12 months on that in relation to the long-term player development and in relation to youth coaching.
Your last comment, question, Paul?
Okay. I guess since we're in extra time, I'm going to try and, I know I had more comments about refereeing, but I'll try and limit them. I guess one of the comments I had is, I think with respect to refereeing, for quite a while, referees have sort of felt talked to by the OSA. I won't use the word dictated to, but talked to, and I don't know that there was as much of a reciprocal and collaborative and cooperative discussion with referees within the province. I mean, certainly, I think national referees, maybe higher, comments were adhered to, but from a grassroots level, no. A suggestion that I may have would be to have the referee development committee maybe have a similar outreach program to referees within all the districts. You know, let's get that comment so we don't just a similar structure that we're having today. Have your referee development committee or another committee or whomever you wish to have that so you hear feedback from referees and bring it forward to the OSA. I don't know that that's ever happened. I think it ought to happen. because I don't know that our voices are being heard. I mean, I hear collaborative, cooperative, but we have 11,000 referees. I don't know that you're hearing enough from us to the OSA so that you guys can put the structures in place that you need to help refereeing, you know, within the province. Another suggestion I might have.
Can I just answer that, Paul? You've heard a lot tonight about this is what we're going to do. And it's important that you hear that, but it's more important for us to execute that too as well. So the gentleman asked a little bit earlier on about social media. Within the referee unit, they are launching a Facebook page that's going to provide that opportunity for interaction. Is that exactly what you're looking for? I'm not quite sure, but it is a step along the way. But I will bring that back to you.
No, I think what you need to do is do something like you have tonight. Bring it across the province. Have it focused on referees so that referees can attend and tell the OSA what the concerns are of referees to the OSA, at least within maybe the referee development committee, and then that committee can, you know, sort of put forward ideas and concerns that you may have. The interactive would just be more of an interactive page. I'm looking at more of how do we improve refereeing within the province and get that info from, you know, from the referee development committee through. And you can. I'm just putting this out there as an idea. You don't have to. Another idea would be to actually maybe have the referee development committee have, you know, practical clinics set up across the province. I know, for example, I'm on sabbatical right now, but provincial level. Once I got my provincial level status, great. But then there were no ongoing, you know, development clinics. Here's a weekend for you guys who are provincial refs. Here's a weekend for you guys who are regional refs, you know, district level refs. Have some practical weekend sessions set up at the OSA. You know, obviously you can't just have it in one locale within the province, but have these instructional sessions created. You know, that may be of assistance. You know, but certainly, you know, again, you know, try and work something through to improve, you know, refereeing within the province. There's a couple of other issues, but I mean, we're in extra time, so I'll
you can chat with me.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Okay, that concludes the questions and answers. I'd like to thank the panel for.
Can I ask a question, Bruce? Say yes. And this is for Ron. Ron, the CSA announced that the Women's World Cup is coming to Canada. But Toronto is being left out. So the OSA going to make representation to the CSA for us to get a game here in Toronto?
Guys had some.
I'll answer the rationale, and then you can ask what we're doing with regards to the CSA. Despite what you've heard out there, the City of Toronto and the City of Hamilton had expressed interest in being a part of the bid process for the Women's World Cup. They had actually sent in some expression of interest. However, in further discussion with the Pan Am Games, there is a period before the games and after the games that the community is not supposed to host any international events. This was pretty close to that framework. So the Pan Am Games group had requested that the City of Toronto and the City of Hamilton, because it is the GTA area that is the host for the Pan Am Games, that they not submit a bid. So it wasn't that the City of Hamilton or the City of Toronto did not wish to submit a bid. Is that because of the Pan Am Games being here and the timing of it, we weren't able to in this particular area. Now, whether or not we're able to host a game, I will pass that one on to you, so you can answer.
Those discussions are happening at the CSA, whether there's potential for for us to possibly host 1 or 2 games within that tournament format. The other issue, the other challenge for us is MLS, TFC, and how do you coordinate all those scheduled issues with a professional club choosing Beamer Field within the Toronto area. So yeah, I believe now with the World Cup being awarded to Canada, there'll be some further discussions, and hopefully at the end of the day there'll be some opportunities for the province of Ontario, and specifically our association, to work with the appropriate leaders and bring 1 or 2 games forward to Toronto.
Can you imagine the opening game of the World Cup at Skydome or Rogers Centre?
Oh yeah. So those discussions will take place. And there is a CSA board meeting, not this weekend, but the following weekend, and I know that that's an item that's on the agenda. So as we gain information, then we'll certainly post it and keep you informed.
And the final.
Hey, might as well go for what?
Go for it.
I know that FIFA really did enjoy being here in Toronto during 2007. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
So thanks
Before you take off, I want to thank Bruce for the fact that he kept us all in line tonight and did a very good job, and appreciate that. I want to thank you for being here. There's a lot of notes and information that I've taken. I know the guys done the same, and the important issue from my perspective is our action and our ability to execute and come back with answers, and more importantly, to put things in place that you think and you believe to be important to the development of the game. So having said that, thank you. Our next town hall meeting is going to be in April, and it's going to be in the great city of Woodbridge and Woodstock. So
You're here now.
Woodstock, and we're certainly going to do our best to continue these types of formats. So I appreciate the information, appreciate the input. More importantly, I know what the weather's like outside, but please be safe and drive carefully home.